So thanks for being here. Harmony, as soon as you're ready.
Director Bradley.
Happy to be here.
Director Cardenas. Director Walking.
Here.
Director Keegley. Here. Director Litback. Here. Director Olson. Director Peterson.
Here.
Director Prokopis.
Here.
Director Silvestrini.
Here.
Director Stevenson.
All right, move into public comments. We have any public comments. I have some public comment, Mr. Chair. Gosh, I could spend a lot of time on this. There's been a lot of people curious about the incident that occurred in Holiday. When was it, Chief? A couple nights ago?
Yeah.
I don't think I need to get into too much detail, other than, we had let me just give you just a little bit of background so you understand the context. We had a home in Holiday on 6200 South and just west of 2300 East that, the prior resident had passed away about 6 months prior. He was, I'm not sure exactly what his designation was, but he was a chemist, either taught chemistry at the college level or high school level, but had an interest in chemistry. So after he had passed, my understanding is his wife had contacted somebody from the county health department to come just kind of take a look at, stuff in the house. There are a lot of chemicals stored in the house. And don't hold me to any of these facts. I can see Deputy Mayor shaking her head like, if I misspeak, will you correct me?
Yes.
Anyway, the person on the site became concerned about what she was seeing, and eventually the EPA got involved and actually flew some people in, I think, from Denver. And they removed a lot of chemicals from the site to more of a secure facility. But in the course of clearing those chemicals out, they came across 2 stores of dynamite, one out in an outbuilding and one in the basement of the home. And over the course of about a 12-hour period, the bomb squad got involved, obviously. I think we had some people actually from Salt Lake City bomb squad come in to assist our hazmat team and bomb squad in UFA, and determined in talking with the homeowner, the dynamite was given to the homeowner 40 years ago by his father, and they didn't know how old it was at that point. But the bottom line was, we didn't come up with the term ancient dynamite. I don't know where that came from, but anyway, it was very old, unstable, crystallized dynamite. And at some point, the bomb squad, and now look at the chiefs and whatnot to see if I'm misspeaking there, but eventually they got to the point where they did not want to transport it. It was just viewed as too unstable. And so the determination was made over a period of time. I think the primary decision makers were the UFA folks, probably Chief Pilgrim and Chief Dern, that the best course was to detonate it on site, which is what pushed the plan into place to dig a trench for the dynamite that was outside, to put that in the trench and focus the blast area up, and then go back into the house 10 minutes later and detonate the dynamite that was in the house. And the homeowner at that point knew that the house would basically be unserviceable at that point. It ended up catching fire, burning to the ground. So that was that. But there's a lot more that went into it. But my primary, communication is it could have been a catastrophic situation. I was talking to Chief Anderton, who was on scene the next day, and he said, had this scenario occurred where there was an incident on the site, and with all the chemicals that were on the site, that was very likely. If that home had, say, caught fire and that dynamite had exploded untrenched, it would have been catastrophic. It was, for those that were on site when they detonated, there were 2 separate detonations. It was I don't know if impressive is the right word, but it was a big, two very big booms. And had that not been directed up and it had gone out and firefighters would have been on scene, it would have been an incredibly catastrophic situation. So, anyway, the determination to keep that dynamite on site and not try to move it and detonate it on site was made. Gosh, what was it, Chief? About 11 p.m. The target time kept moving, but the bottom line is they made that determination. It kicked some things into place where number one, you have to clear instead of a 300-foot radius, we had to clear a 1,500-foot radius, which was a lot of homes. I don't know how many, but on a moment's notice. And within, I don't know, an hour or so, Chief Hoyle, who was kind of on-scene commander for us, working with Chief Mazarin, had, I don't know, 50, 60 officers.
About 75.
75 officers up in Holiday, out in neighborhoods, knocking on homes. The county got involved and Tara showed up from EOC and was working on the IPAWS messages, the reverse 911s. I got messages from Mayor Wilson, Deputy Mayor Cantor got involved. And it was something to see us. We had basically were out in neighborhoods knocking on doors. Emergency messages were going out. We had to open up Oakwood Elementary, and LDS stake president got involved and opened up a church and started working with us. But we basically had to go clear every single home in that area before we could detonate those blasts. And they did it in just over 2 hours from 11 till 1:45 in the morning. We were out clearing those neighborhoods, not we, but they. And we had fire on site. Chief Dern, Chief Pilgrim were on scene the entire time running the show. Chief Mazarin showed up, but I think Chief Hoyle basically got up to here with his capacity. So Chief Maz came up and helped. We had Chief Craig was over on 2300 East helping with traffic control. Anyway, it was something to see, you know, just in terms of the coordinated effort to get this done from the unified model with unified police and unified fire working together on that. The EPA was there. The county got involved from an emergency standpoint. The Red Cross showed up on scene at the school to provide food. We were sheltering people in Oakwood Elementary and the church. And we're finally able to get people released and back out to their homes about, I don't know, about 4:30 a.m. after the two blasts took place. But anyway, it was for people that are involved with the unified model, we always say when you don't need it until you need it, but when you need it, you need it. And to watch it all come together and how many assets came into Holiday in a very short period of time to coordinate this effort to make sure the community was safe was incredible. So I have to I just want to sing the praises of the unified model, both unified police and fire. It was in on full display a couple nights ago. And, you know, Chief Hoyle did a phenomenal job he was exhausted at 7:30 in the morning. The next day he'd been on duty for a long time, running the show there, and it was a lot to coordinate. And all of our partners at Unified Fire, who were phenomenal. The second explosion was not expected to be as big as it was, and as soon as it went off, the house was immediately engulfed, and they were obviously ready to go, and it burned till the next morning, basically. But also our partners at the county were, and so just want to thank everybody. Bottom line is nobody got hurt, nobody got killed. If it had gone undiscovered, I think there's a pretty good chance that some kind of event would have occurred, whether it been a chemical fire or something, or just people not being aware that the dynamite. I never did find out if the homeowner actually knew the dynamite was there. I never got a clear answer on that. But if somebody had gone in and started cleaning out that outbuilding, let's say, started throwing stuff around, there's a pretty good chance that that would have detonated. It was that unstable. So anyway, just thanks to everybody. Chief, I don't know if there's anything you want to add, or Chief Maz.
No, I'll just, you summarized that really well, and I just appreciate everybody's efforts from within our organization that came out that night. Our relationship with UFA, it's always so nice to have that relationship with our brothers and sisters in the fire business, and the city, the county, and even there were federal partners there from the EPA. Everybody worked so well together in that event, and it just, obviously, as you mentioned, it was a huge success, and well, I mean, when I say a huge success, I mean, nobody was hurt, and which could have been very catastrophic, minimal property damage, but everybody went home safe, and it was a great team effort.
Good job, everyone.
Thanks.
Do we have any other public comment? Do you want to follow that up?
I don't want to complain about how loud it is in Holiday.
All right, we'll move on to item 3, which is the legislative update. We're here from our lobbies.
Thank you all for letting me be here today, and thank you, Chief Maz and Chair, for requesting that I can give this very brief presentation of the legislative summary and also your feedback on the bills to include. So we've each received 3 handouts from me. The first of which is an example of the type of email that every member of the UPD legislative team during the legislative session receives every single day of the session. So every Thursday, Chief Maz, Chief Dial, members of the sheriff's staff, we all get together and we discuss legislation that would impact law enforcement agencies and UPD specifically, and take a priority position of level 1, level 2, level 3 being the highest, and then determine how important it is level 1, level 2, level 3. So if there is a high priority level 3 that we support, it's something that we actively focus on. We worked committees and lawmakers to ensure that it would pass. If it is something that we level 3, level 2, or even level 1 oppose, we discussed it with law enforcement personnel who are very, very skilled and trained in their specific duties to tell us what in the law doesn't work specifically for them. And we were able to amend a number of bills to get us from opposition to either neutral or support. There were a few bills that we just flat out opposed throughout the entire session. None of those bills passed, and every single one of the UPD priority bills did pass. So it was an excellent session as far as UPD is concerned. So like I said, this first email went out to that legislative team that met every Thursday during the session. An email like this was sent every single day discussing which bills were heard that were a priority level 1, level 2, level 3, and what bills would be heard in committee the following day. The next page is an example of the type of report that I wrote every night on our level 2 and 3 priority bills. It basically discusses what the sponsor said the bill did. It's a brief summary, discusses who testified for and against the bill and the votes that were taken. So there were real-time updates throughout the session. And this last document that's a bit longer is a legislative summary that I've prepared. There are 20 bills that were priority bills to UPD that I have included in this summary. After you take time to read through it, if there is a bill that you know impacts you directly, or you just want more information on it, and that goes for any staff member as well. If there are any pieces of legislation that you'd like a summary of, feel free to contact me and I will create a summary of those bills as well. And very briefly, I'm just going to go over a few key points. First of all, House Bill 36, Open and Public Meetings Act Amendment. It doesn't necessarily impact the rank and file of UPD, but it does impact all of you and every public meeting that you attend, including this meeting today. So one of the counties, not Salt Lake County, but one of the counties last year received an audit from the Legislative Auditor General. county commission serves in a governing capacity, a legislative capacity. If two of the three of them met to discuss anything, that technically could be considered falling under the open public meeting rule. The legislative auditor general sought clarification from the legislature to really define what an open meeting was and what would constitute that. So I will read it just because you will all have been meetings. House Bill 36 contains several clarifications and new definitions relating to existing open public meeting laws. It addresses the orchestration of public meetings outside of the public eye by clarifying that a quorum of a public body may not, and this is the important part, act together outside a meeting in a concerted and deliberate way to predetermine an action to be taken during a meeting on relevant matter. So if there is a quorum present, you can't leave this meeting, go out and have a discussion with half of you or more. And you cannot decide what action you want to take when the open and public meeting occurs. If two or three of you want to do that, that is fine. That does not constitute a quorum. But you cannot do that as a quorum. The definition of a meeting is now a gathering of a public body or specified body with the quorum present that is convened by an individual with authority to convene the public body or specified body, following the process provided by law for convening the public body or specified body for the express purpose of acting as a public body or specific specified body to receive public comment about a relevant matter, deliberate about a relevant matter, or take action upon a relevant matter. So the legislature was really, really clear that it needs to be a relevant matter. You can have a quorum of you together out. And if you're discussing things that are not a relevant matter to UPD, to your city councils, to your county councils, that is fine. But as soon as you start talking about a relevant matter that should be discussed in an open and public meeting, you have to disperse and have that in front of the public. A relevant matter regarding a public body with both executive and legislative responsibilities does not include a managerial or operational matter. So if you're on a county council and you are dealing with a managerial matter or an operational matter within the county, that is fine for a majority to meet and discuss it. But as soon as you get to that legislative portion, that relevant matter pertaining to your county council, your city council, you do have to call an open public meeting.
Is that meant to target commission forms of government more than council?
It came to pass because of the commission form of government where they are a three-body commission. However, there are a number of governmental entities that have boards of only 3 people. But it does apply to larger boards as well. I know the Hodges Water Conservancy District in the state, I think, has 17, 18 board members. It applies to them as well. It's a little more obvious if that large of a number gets together to discuss it, but
Slightly obvious.
But yes, it was aimed at county commissions with a 3-member body, but it applies to everyone. House Bill 67, First Responder Mental Health Grant. This is a follow-up from last year's legislation that created this First Responder Mental Health Grant, providing up to $6,000 for any first responder who wants to receive higher education in mental health treatment. As you all know, it's a very big issue and we do not have enough people in that field to help treat our first responders. What they found in implementing that grant program is that the time to apply for it was very, very narrow. It only occurred once during the year, and so they didn't have nearly enough people apply for the grant. They still have plenty of money. So what they did with this bill is they opened it up. It's a longer period of time. There are 2 times throughout the year where they can apply for this grant. So I encourage any of you, if that is something you're interested in, there is money available for that. House Bill 68, drug sentencing modifications. During the interim, there was a presentation to the Law Enforcement Criminal and Juvenile Justice Committee. And as part of that, I can't remember if it was UDOT or the Highway Patrol, but someone was giving a presentation and discussed how much drugs were being taken, and then it showed the amount of weapons and guns that were also being recovered in a lot of traffic stops. And Representative Wilcox thought, well, we need to fix that. And so after that discussions, I reached out to Representative Stoddard and Representative Wilcox and said our Metro Gaming Unit has been saying this is a problem for years. It would be fantastic if there was a mandatory minimum for those who are trafficking drugs or weapons while having both, because once you add a dangerous weapon, it becomes extremely dangerous for law enforcement, civilians, and even those who are trafficking the drugs. So what this bill does is it creates a first or second degree felony with a mandatory minimum sentence if someone, any individual is arrested while they are obviously transporting drugs for the purpose of sale, so not small amounts, but very large amounts of detail in the bill. And also there is a dangerous weapon, not just present, but easily accessible. So if there's a dangerous weapon in the trunk, it doesn't necessarily count. But if there's a dangerous weapon underneath the seat where that individual could grab that weapon and shoot at one of our officers, it's a first or second degree felony with mandatory minimum sentences. House Bill 84, school safety amendments, received a lot of attention throughout the entire session. I believe it ended up passing in the form of a fifth substitute because there was a lot of back and forth between school districts, law enforcement agencies, the Utah Police Association, the Sheriff's Association. And what we ended up with is my entire one-page review of that bill. I could go into a lot of detail, but I won't for the sake of time. But there is a state security chief, and that chief and his staff will be working with county school security officials, and that is someone who is delegated from the sheriff of each county, and they will perform assessments of schools, safety assessments. And that's going to be the first piece of House Bill 84 is conducting these safety assessments in every single public school throughout the state that serves more than hundreds, or if there's 100 students or less, they are exempt from it, but every school that has more than 100 students will qualify. One portion I want to read is the second to last paragraph because this is something that UPD will be doing. A law enforcement agency with a school resource officer unit must develop a school resource officer policy. The law enforcement agency is required to ensure the policy includes the process for assignment and selection of a school resource officer, required trainings of a school resource officer, internal reporting requirements, arrests and use of force protocols, general oversight and accountability, and other duties required of a school resource officer. Now, the state security chief is going to create a model policy that touches on all of those. Any law enforcement agency in the state can adopt that if they so choose, or you can create your own if that fits yours better. But just make sure it falls within each one of those that is listed. And the bill also deals with a lot of anti-bullying provisions and the plans that the school and the school resource officer have to make. There were quite a few bills that dealt with student reintegration. If there were crimes committed on or off school's property, if there were violent offenses, things like that. So school resource officers will be getting notified of a lot of activity, a lot more this year than they've ever been required to be notified of before. House Bill 102, peace officer standard and training should make all law enforcement officers very, very happy. As most of you know, every year the legislature tries to add more training requirements from posts, and there's I believe it's a 40-hour training requirement each year. When you start adding hours and hours of this, that, and the other, it becomes untenable. So what this bill does is it creates flexibility, and it allows the law enforcement agency, whether it's the police chief or the sheriff, to go through and determine which trainings are maybe specialized to the special victims unit or the Metro Gaming unit. And those specific trainings can occur once every 3 years instead of every single year. So that frees up some flexibility and allows each law enforcement agency to determine what training should be provided and what training should be provided for specific officers. So it's not a one size fits all. beginning of July 1, 2024, all peace officers who are currently employed must participate in a training at least once every 3 years, focus on mental health and other crisis intervention responses, intervention development of disorders, and responses to sexual traumas and investigations of sexual assault and sexual abuse. So any of those above mentioned subjects will count towards the 40-hour annual training on the year in which they're received, but they don't have to be trained on those subjects every single year. House Bill 177 forcible entry warrant amendments is very, very common sense, but it needed to be placed in law to allow it to occur. This basically says that an officer does not need to knock and announce that they are breaching a barrier, that they are coming in to go after the perpetrator if they have been on site for hours and the person who has blockaded themselves inside some form of a structure is obviously aware that law enforcement is out there because they have literally been there for hours asking them to come out. At that point, they will have to receive a warrant to do a forcible entry, but they don't have to knock and announce at that point, which is really, really important because that's when law enforcement officers get hurt. That's when civilians get hurt, and that's when perpetrators get hurt, is if they knock and announce that they're coming in to breach. Suddenly that person who's barricaded themselves inside the structure knows they're coming right that second. So having the element of surprise as far as when they're officially coming in is extremely important for safety. But it protects the individual who has barricaded themselves because they do know law enforcement is present, that at any moment, and literally this is after hours and hours. House Bill 211 is a UPD bill. So something that I have found amazing while being UPD's lobbyist is that officers will actually come and talk to me and say, this is a problem, there's no law to fix it. My hands are tied. And I get to say, great, let's fix it. What can we do? So the SVU detectives within UPD brought this up about a year and a half ago and said, part of the grooming process is adults passionately kissing, French kissing minors and children. And there's literally no law in the book that says it's illegal. I cannot charge them with that. If they do it, I have to wait until they get to the next level. And we don't want children to be victimized. We don't want it to get to a case of aggravated sexual assault, rape, or sodomy. We would really like to be able to stop it where it starts. So we brought forth legislation last minute last year, and the Prosecutors Association, Statewide Association of Prosecutors, came to us and said, this is a great concept, but some of the language, the way legislative research drafted it, doesn't work for us. It'll make it too hard to prosecute. So we pulled it for a year. We worked throughout the interim with the SVU detectives and with SWAT and with the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office and the County Governor's Office. And we got the bill to a really, really good, narrowly defined place that made pretty much every lawmaker uncomfortable as we discussed this bill. So to make it very clear that the unlawful kissing of a child or a minor is not a peck on the lips that some families do, a grandparent giving a cute little kiss to their grandchild, that's not what this is. It clearly states that the adult must insert their tongue in the child's mouth. It's very, very clear. There's also a Romeo and Juliet. This is House Bill 225. There's a Romeo and Juliet clause in there as well. So for a child 13 and under, it does not matter how much older the adult is. It is illegal. It is a misdemeanor. That will be going on the record of the perpetrator. But if it's someone 14 through 17, a minor, there's the Romeo and Juliet clause where they can be up to 10 years old, that minor. So if a 17-year-old is in college and goes to a party and makes out with a 26-year-old, they're not going to get arrested for this. Let's go back to House Bill 211, which is penalty for false statement during a drug arrest. That is also a UPD bill. What our law enforcement officers were finding is that they would arrest a subject. The subject would say, I've ingested drugs. You have to take me to the hospital. And they cannot put them into jail if they have said that they have ingested drugs just prior to being arrested. They have to take them to seek medical attention. A lot of times it is a false statement. They did not ingest drugs. They just didn't want to go to jail. And they thought, if you take me to the ER and it's multiple hours long wait, the cop's just gonna leave and I'm gonna be able to walk out of here. And all that really did was waste hospital resources, law enforcement agency resources, taxpayer resources. So what this bill does, and again, it was brought to us by UPD detectives, is it makes it a Class B misdemeanor on top of whatever other charge they were being arrested for if they make a false statement and say they ingested drugs. So this will allow our officers to say, did you really ingest drugs? Oh, I take you to the ER, and it's found that you do not have that in your system. I'm adding a Class B misdemeanor on top of everything else. Do you really want to waste my time, or did you ingest drugs? And then they can recount the statement and just be taken to jail, or if they did in fact ingest drugs, be taken to the hospital. House Bill 251, post-retirement reemployment amendments. This bill is important to all staff members, whether they are civilian or not. So the bill is the result of a 4 years set of negotiations. House Bill 251 creates a cost-neutral way for individuals who retire within Tier 1 and Tier 2 within the URS to be reemployed by an entity within the system. So the individual to be reemployed with the URS may do so after 90 days. If they are civilian, they will have to receive a 20% haircut on the retirement benefits they're receiving. If they're a first responder, it's a 15% haircut. They also will not receive their cost of living adjustment, their full adjustment while they are reemployed. The moment that reemployed employee decides to retire again, they get bumped back up to 100% of their retirement benefits, and the cost of living adjustment increases will occur from that point on. Something important for the agency is that the employer will be required to pay the full retirement contribution rate into the system during the time of reemployment. Once the reemployed individual retires again, they will go back to the regular contribution rate that they are currently doing now. The important part of this bill is that when it was originally drafted, it had that haircut and cost of living adjustment for the retiree. For the reemployer, suddenly they're paying the full retirement contribution, which is a greater expense as well. And that was the new option, and it's a 1 year separation period and keeping the status quo. So we worked with the sponsor and he agreed to put that back in. So you have the option of either or. So you as an entity can weigh whether you want to do the 90-day reemployment option or the 1 year separation if you choose to reemploy under the Utah retirement system. And that's for any entity within the Utah retirement system.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
If they reemploy for, say, an additional 4 years, and the entity that's employing them is contributing to URS, are they gaining years of
They are
service?
not gaining years of service within their Utah retirement system. So the way the actuaries were able to keep the Utah retirement system whole is to have that 20% or 15% haircut from the employee. And also that entire contribution rate that doesn't go to the employee, it just goes into the system. And that's how they were able to keep it cost neutral. But again, you can keep the 1 year separation if that's what you choose to do. It's on the table now. House Bill 259, juvenile interrogation modifications. This bill was very simple. It simply states that a parent or a trusted friendly adult may attend the interrogation of a juvenile via video. So there are some instances where teenagers have been sent to Utah to be part of a program. They get arrested, their parent lives in another state. Their parent can't get there, it doesn't matter, they may not have a friendly adult within the state as well. So this allows for a video option to allow that parent or friendly adult to be there. And it also requires that an interpreter must be provided for the interrogation child or a trusted adult. So if the child needs an interpreter, if the parent or trusted adult needs an interpreter, the law enforcement agency needs to provide that interpreter for that interrogation. Law enforcement employee overtime amendments. This is Representative Lizzie's bill. So this bill modifies the relevant work periods and hours applicable to calculating overtime pay for law enforcement employees. Beginning July 1, 2024, a non-exempt law enforcement employee who is employed by the state will be designated to one of the following 2 work periods and hours for the purpose of overtime calculation. 80 hours in a 14 consecutive day payroll cycle or 160 hours in a 28 consecutive day payroll cycle. So again, that's just for state employees, and it goes through what that now is for overtime paid for law enforcement personnel for state employees. Municipal and county law enforcement agencies may choose to adopt the state policy, but they do not have to. So you can look at the state's overtime policy and say, we think this is great. We as a board want to adopt that same policy and live by that. You are absolutely welcome to do so, but you may also continue to keep your overtime pay policy as is. And that goes with the county as well, sheriff. Let's skip ahead a little bit. House Bill 362, juvenile justice revisions. This is going to matter a lot to Metro Gang Unit and student resource officers. It changes the requirement of a minor to be considered habitually truant from at least 10 days to at least 20 days. And the school and school resource officer must refer a minor who is habitually truant to an evidence-based alternative intervention. And if that minor is alleged to be habitually truant, the school administrator or their designee or school resource officer may only refer the minor to law enforcement officer or agency or a court if the minor has previously alleged of being a habitual truant at least twice during the same school year. And the minor was already sent to that evidence-based alternative intervention or for prevention and early intervention services for at least 2 of those. And this is something that is new. So in case your school resource officers are keeping school reintegration plans for any of the students that are within their school, that is now clearly classified as a protected record under grandma. So they may not share that. Let's see, House Bill 378 is also extremely important legislation for all first responders. What this bill does is it requires the Department of Public Safety to train on critical incident stress management and provide informational resources to first responder agencies that is directed towards those agencies' management and employees every single year. The department may assist in that agency drafting a grant application for the funds that are available through the department. The bill expands access to the mental health services program to some civilian employees that were not previously given mental health services. So this would include someone such as a records manager. So anyone who's been authorized to view or otherwise access information concerning crimes, accidents, or other traumatic events. So if you have civilian personnel who are looking at some of these very serious traumatic events and they request mental health treatment, all law enforcement agencies, all firefighter agencies, just first responder agencies need to provide that mental health treatment. It also requires first responder agencies to annually provide information to all employees about the availability of mental health resources, including civilian employees who qualify. So every single year, the agency must notify their employees that they have access to this mental health treatment. Mental health resources under this bill include assessments and availability to mental health services for personnel directly involved in a critical incident within 48 hours of the incident, and regular and continuing access to mental health programs for spouses and children of first responders who have retired or separated from the agency, and spouses of first responders who have retired or separated from the agency. And that takes effect July 1. So it expands those who are able to receive mental health treatment via your first responder agency. House Bill 418, Student Offender Reintegration Amendments. This is actually legislation that was brought from some UPD officers, but wasn't brought to myself. They took it directly to their city, which was Kearns, and they talked to a lawmaker to get this legislation put in place. What was occurring and what the school resource officer out there in Kearns was noticing is that when there's been a violent case of harassment, bullying, sexual assault especially, perpetrated by a student, either to a staff member or another student. A lot of times the reintegration plan was allowing that student to go back into the same school. And that would cause the victims to drop out of school rather than have to face their sin in school and continue to be re-victimized on a daily basis simply by seeing that individual that caused so much stress. So this bill requires each local school board to adopt a policy for responding to a situation where a student has committed a violent felony or a sexual crime, including hazing. There must be a process for a school resource officer to provide input to the school to consider regarding the safety risks a student may pose in reintegrating into the school. And prior to that, the school resource officer did not have to be part of the process. Now this makes it so the school resource officer has to give their opinion and do a risk assessment. There must be a procedure in place to determine an alternate placement for the offender if the offending student attends the same school as their victim, or if a student or staff member at the school has a restraining order against the student. And the only way a student who has committed a sexual crime against another student or staff member may be treated at that same school is if the victim gives permission to do so. That bill got solved towards the end of the session, and that's actually when I received some calls from the city of Kern saying this is really important, it really matters. And so I took it to the Law Enforcement Legislative Committee, which meets every single Monday, and said, this is a really important bill, the condition of support, that got the bill moving again, and it passed out during 48 hours. House Bill 432, child abuse and neglect reporting amendments. That is another bill that was not a UPD bill, but kind of became one as it progressed through the process, and then our SVP presidents saw it and said, this is amazing, we care about this. So they came and testified and helped support and get this bill through. So what this bill does is it strikes an elegant balance between protecting the sanctity of the duties of a member of the clergy and protecting children. So this allows a member of the clergy to report instances where there is child abuse that is occurring when the perpetrator is the one that went in and confessed to the clergy. So currently, if the victim comes in, clergy is able to go and provide that to law enforcement, but this gives protection to clergy. The law was silent as to whether they could or could not, but they didn't have any liability protection before this bill passed. This bill gives that liability protection to allow a member of the clergy to go in and report to law enforcement if they believe that the child abuse is continuing or is likely to continue. Which is fantastic because it lets our amazing law enforcement officers go through and actually find facts. It does not necessarily allow or require the clergy to testify in court, but it does get the ball rolling. And so this is, like I said, a very good balance. There was no major religion that came and stood against it, which is the first time a bill like this has come before the legislature and actually passed and had no opposition other than from the defense counsel. So this was a great bill to be involved with.
So it doesn't require them to.
It does not require them to, and that is why the Catholic Church, where the confessional is very sacred, we're comfortable with it because it allows it. It provides liability protection, but it does not require it. The House Bill 460 government employee conscience protection amendments. I included this. There were a number of bills this year that dealt with religious freedom or conscience protection. The bill defines conscience as a sincerely held belief in the rightness or wrongness of an action and undue hardship as a substantial. So that's what it is defined as. So this bill requires that any governmental entity must make reasonable accommodations for the beliefs and conscience of a government employee by relieving them from performing those tasks. However, when they do consider that, they can look at how many times that same employee has said, I have a conscientious objection within a 12-month period in making that determination. It goes through what occurs if the governmental entity refuses that, the reasons why they're allowed to refuse that. If the place is an undue hardship or burden on the governmental entity, they can refuse that request. And it also allows the Attorney General to take up the case of the employee if they are not allowed to have their conscientious objection met. The big thing for us here is that first responder agencies are exempt from the accommodation requirement if the employee's objection is to a task that involves protecting the safety of the public. So if you have someone, a detective, sergeant, lieutenant, any member of your law enforcement who says, I conscientiously object to doing no-knock warrants, I don't feel good about it. Well, that's part of their duties. It's part of the safety and protection of the people. So if it's part of their duties as a first responder of a law enforcement agency, they can't have an objection, but something else they could. So just be aware of that. There were quite a few things station dealing with that type of thing. Senate Bill 76, evidence retention modifications. This bill goes into detail of when evidence needs to be stored, when it can be given back to the victim or the perpetrator, when it can be destroyed a year after the final appeal or the individual has served their entire sentence. And this is fantastic because it is designed to decrease the amount of space needed to store evidence. So it came about because many law enforcement agencies said, we are keeping all of this evidence, we have to build more facility space, we just don't have it and it's extremely expensive. So this kind of streamlines that evidence retention process. And SB 135, advanced air mobility and aeronautics amendments. I don't know if you were privy to conversations during the legislative session, but initially this bill, as it was drafted, made it so no governmental entity could use any kind of a drone that was made in Russia or China. That's for safety and security purposes. A lot of governmental entities came forward and said, this is terrible because the ones that we have are already made in China. They're less expensive, they're more efficient. Unfortunately, the drones that are made here in the United States are about 10 years behind what they're currently getting from China for less price. And so we worked with the sponsor and we were able to whittle it down to figure out what his objective was, which was protecting critical information. And so this bill now only applies to drones being utilized for critical infrastructure, which I don't think will ever be something that UPD or UFA ever utilizes, but Water Conservancy districts, UDOT on occasion, there are some governmental entities that do use drones for that purpose of critical infrastructure. Because they understand that we all want to be very judicious with taxpayer funds, they put in a provision that states that any governmental entity that utilizes drones made in China or Russia to inspect critical infrastructure will have until July 1, 2028 to replace those drones, which is about how much time they would need to cycle through anyway. That's, I would say, so that was just kind of a brief overview. You have in front of you, you can read all of it. And again, if there are any questions on legislation that is not included in the summary, we followed over 250 bills throughout the session as UPD. So feel free to ask me about any of them as well, but I am happy to create a summary like this for any bill that you have questions on. And I'm sure I went over my 10 minutes, I'm sorry.
No, that was great. Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving to item 4, UPD update.
Mark Olson come up with me and we will speed this up a little bit. First of all, I want to thank Heather and Brittany. They played a huge role this year in the legislative process for UPD and the Sheriff's Office and really law enforcement as a whole throughout the state. So I just want to recognize them for all the work that they have done. It takes a lot of work. And then also all of the detectives and patrol precincts that participated. It's not easy to, just call somebody and say, hey, we need you up here right now to testify on something. And there were many that did on both sides of the house. There's one bill, well, I'll talk about the school safety amendment really quick. Heather touched on that. We identified Deputy Chief Van Emmerich as the county school safety chief, and he's going to be working with the state but we're gonna work with all of the local agencies. Chief Dial, Chief Mazarin attended the BPA. That's a meeting where all the chiefs get together monthly. And a lot was hashed out of how this is gonna work, but we'll continue communicating with everybody. It will have a huge impact, and there is a financial impact to every single agency. We just don't know what that is yet until we start performing the training and figuring out how we, work with these guardians. So we'll keep you updated.
I was just gonna ask how that works. The statutory responsibility falls on you and Zach for the entire county, regardless of jurisdiction. You guys have to see that it
To
happens.
coordinate everything, and the local police chiefs from BPA have said they want to do it in-house with, so Zach will just be coordinating, but when you do take it in-house, there is going to be a cost to it, and there's no funding in this bill for law enforcement. It's all for the schools, so we'll keep you updated on that, because we really don't know yet until we dive deep into it. But I can assure you that Chief Dial and Chief Maz will be part of those conversations. And then on a national level, there was a Fourth Amendment is not for sale act that was critical for us to get that bill squashed. It went through the House, and a lot of work was done to get it bill in the Senate. It had a huge impact to law enforcement across the country. It would impact our investigations. It just would have taken tools away in solving crime. So we did want to recognize Senator Romney and Congressman Blakemore for their support. They were the two Utah representatives that voted against it, and their votes helped. So we were hoping we'd get all of them, but we weren't able to get their support. So lots of work went on behind the scenes on that bill as well. And then I want to recognize again, Chief Boyle, I know you did already, but I would like to personally and for the organization, all the work that he did. Chief Maz was there, Captain Craig was there, but there were so many officers, and it's very impressive. And again, it does show how that model works. So you make one call, you have 100 officers ready. And so it's a great model in that sense. A lot of work by everybody, and again, it makes UPD shine in that sense. And those big things happen, they know how to respond. So just wanted to point that out. Also, I attended the VEC trustee meeting yesterday. There was a discussion about the URS civilian increases that have, I know UPD is supporting that to increase as part of the budget, but most of the agencies that participate in VEC were not. So I don't believe that VEC will be supporting the employee. The cost will go back to the employee. That's the current talks as of yesterday. They are still looking at what other agencies are going to be supporting and paying that for the employees, but it looks like most are not, because they have a lot of civilians in their cities, and they didn't feel like it was fair to the other civilians in the city to give it to dispatchers, but not the other civilians. So I think that there is a big difference between the job that they do. Dispatchers are put into situations similar to law enforcement, mentally. And without these dispatchers, we could not do our job, and they save our lives so many times. So I'm in full support of that. Also, I'm working with Harry and actually the DA's office. We're working on either transferring contracts or MOUs, agreements. This is taking a lot of time because there's so many, and it's so, there's so many that are combined right now that we're having to split and look how to do that. So it is taking time, and it may take past the July 1st date. But we are working hard that way and also with evidence and other things that will come up, but we'll keep you updated as we figure this out. They have another meeting today, so I'm hoping by the May meeting, we will have some information for you. But they are working, Chief Maz, I believe Chief Dial might be in those meetings, Chief Ackerman as well, so we will keep you updated on that, and I think that is all I have for right now, because I know we're behind schedule. So. Any questions for me? Turn your time over to Mark.
Thank you. Just wanted to provide a quick update on our staffing situation. We haven't done that for about a month. We've had some pretty significant changes. So where we are today, we are down 11 true vacancies, and I'm going to preface this as a bit of a projection out to about May 6th. So it includes some pending separations and some pending onboardings. So as of May 6th, we will be down 11 true vacancies. We have 14, as you can see here, that are in training. And that's how those are broken out here. Some of those will be done as soon as next week. Others will be done in November 5th. So quite the range there. Pending separation, we do have Lieutenant Lord and Lieutenant Taylor that will be separating tomorrow. They are both going to Salt Lake County to be lieutenants over there. We wish them well and thank them for their service here. Officer Tiffany Twitchell Smith will be retiring effective the 30th. She's having her retirement party tomorrow. That's the Mill Creek precinct. And then Officer Amy Pierre is, she's only been with us for about 7 months. She is resigning. She's taking a position in Montana. She'll be doing it. As far as what's in the pipeline, we have 4 that have applied this month. We'll be taking the PT next month. These fields here are these fields are the ones that will be starting with us in May. We have 2 going to the academy that will be starting. We have 1 rehire and 1 lateral hire that will be starting all at the same time in May on the 6th. And then additionally, we have 4 entry-level candidates that are currently in the background and 1 additional lateral that's in the background. Working with those folks. The next target hire date we're looking at is in August.
So the 4 at the bottom will come off the 11 number and we will have 7.
No, so that, as I said, this is kind of a projection out to May 6th. That 11 includes those 4 coming on board.
After 4 of 11.
Right. So, and as far as attrition for the year, we are, we've 10 total separations, 2 of those being Lieutenant Lord and Lieutenant Taylor going over to the county. So that's pretty well on track. As you can see in the monthly attrition as compared to last year, there's a bit of an uptick in April, but 2 of those are going to the county. So that's why that's happening. Otherwise, we're right on track as far as normal attrition. And then the one in May is the Officer Pierre. She won't be separating from the 6th. So that's why that's there. I talked a little bit about the hiring timeline, so I won't cover that one again. And then total numbers, just to give you an idea of where we are. You can see there are 64 folks that are eligible to retire today. With another, 109 that will be eligible in 5 years. And that includes those 64. That seems like a big number, but it includes the 64 that are already eligible. So that's pretty much my update. Do you have any questions on any of that?
I do. I'm worried about employee count, right? We're at that point where the sheriff's gonna start hiring, and are we gonna, do we have a plan to sit on some vacancies just to ensure that we do not end up heavy?
So we have gone back and forth with this over and over again. You know, they have now opened their job postings on the county side, and so I think we'll have a better sense in maybe a week of what those numbers look like.
I keep hearing that we're both gonna need to hire, but I
Right.
hope we hit that target, right?
Yeah.
But if that doesn't happen, then what? And that's what I wanna make sure we have.
Yeah, and the challenge is the pool. There's not a lot out there. I mean, it's for these guys, they've been actively recruiting. But there's just not a pool of people who are, raising their hand to do this job anymore. So it's not going to be just a challenge for us, but it is across the board for everybody right now.
Yeah, our intent right now is just to keep going. As we get those numbers back from who's applying to the county, if that changes, we can certainly put a hold on everything at that point. But we're still taking applications, we're still vetting candidates. And as I said before, our next target hire is in August, so we have a little bit of time to make those decisions.
We'll know what it looks like July 1 before we make our next hire.
Right.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Same with promotions, correct?
Yeah, everything's on hold for right now, promotion wise, until county gets their budget and we know what those numbers will actually shake out at.
Okay, thank you.
The only other thing that I had to bring to your attention was, with our benefits and insurance, we are in a position where we need to renew those contracts now. We have open enrollment scheduled for next month. That has to happen before July 1st. I just wanted to make you aware that we will be signing those contracts based on the numbers that we presented to you already. So I just wanted transparency so that you're aware of what we're doing. Questions on that? Okay, get those signed and the ball rolling.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, item 5, UPD reorganization update.
Mr. Chair. While we're on, I want to just touch on what was being said there. We're having discussions. Sell Chief Dallas, some others almost on a daily basis about motions, staffing, projections, models. We're sitting in the room and we're guessing if this happens, this is what we're gonna do. If that happens, this is how we're gonna pivot. So we're very mindful of that. Chief Ackerman will be giving his update here shortly and providing some sort of timeline. That's going to be really important to listen to because that timeline is the county makes a move. We will be making a move at the same time as that information becomes available to us. So we get some facts that we can actually operate on. So that'll be occurring simultaneously. We're ready to go. We're like a coiled spring right now. We just need data. We can make our moves. Quite some time, so I'm very mindful of that, and so I will keep you all updated on what that looks like as we go. But we're going to start getting some of that information. We've been hoping for a long time. It'll be starting to roll in here in the next couple of weeks, as you heard. The counties put out their hiring information, so it's going to be really valuable to us. I mentioned to you as for in the previous update, our locations for the shared services. We're in the process right now of determining what assets we need, ordering the furniture, cubicles, other things that we need to function. I've been very appreciative of all the support of precinct commanders, the division commanders, and including our city and township partners being very welcoming and making sure that we accommodate. So that is happening very quickly. We project right now, based on barring any significant delays, we'd like to have most of those units moved from this building here to those locations month of June. So that is going along really quickly and very nicely. Next month, we'll be presenting the tentative budget to all of you. Appreciate the staff working on that. And as we're doing this recruitment, I just want to kind of put here publicly on the record. I'm very supportive of looking at great UPD employees. Many of them indicated that they would like to stay in the department. And also we have some that indicated they want to go to the sheriff's office. We support that.
And it's not just, has to do with this reorganization, but the philosophy of this department, the sheriff, myself and others, has always been support your employees regardless of what they want to do, careers of their lives. For instance, you know, this great officer going to Montana, support you. Do what's best for you. And so that's the philosophy that I want to make sure everybody's really clear on as we come forward. The success of both these organizations is important. And the administration is supportive of our people in making those decisions. That's like I said, we're ready to go. We're right there on the edge. Just need information and we'll execute. On a little side note, it's not totally reorganized. The UPD is gonna get into baseball here for a while. It's gonna be like baseball. But I was hoping Chief Morris could come up for about 2 minutes. This will be brought to you here. A few minutes soon. Talk about how we're going to play baseball along with the sheriff's office.
Thought you'd choose hockey.
Right now. But baseball's pretty cool too. I mean, Major League Stadium. So we figured we'd get in on it. You're right.
Yeah, I'll be brief. So I have a lot more detail if you want it, but for the sake of time, I'll keep it short. Thank you for allowing me to be here to see you board. So this has been a project we've been working on for about the past year. One thing I'll say right out of the gate, it's all funded. So it's all good there. The idea is there is a group of retired Major League Baseball all-stars, right? That because of their personal experiences, family history, stuff like that, they really have a connection with first responders and they're trying to figure out their why and give back. So they came to this with this idea. And so what will happen is opening season 2026, you will see a ceremonial baseball game that will take place with first responders and these Major League Baseball grades. And all the proceeds and benefits to that will go, they'll give it to the 501c3s that first responders identify to give back to the community, right? So in order to select those members that will be eligible to play with these, you know, heroes of baseball, we've developed this training program that is geared towards first responder mental health. It's helping them deal with coping skills, resiliency skills, but it's all geared under the premises of hitting the 91. So the Major League Baseball athletes will be there along with the mental health clinicians. It's 1 day of training. It's $1,000 per person to go. But UPD has been working diligently and we were able to obtain a $250,000 grant to pay for that training. And when we wrote that grant specific to Salt Lake County. So we are opening it up to UPD and the Office of the Sheriff first. But then if we're not able to fill those 250 spots, on behalf of UPD, we are going out to our sister and allied agencies and asking them to fill those. You know, and we will just kind of coordinate the grant from that point on. So it's not just for UPD and the Sheriff's Office. It's something we want to share to all of first responders within Salt Lake County. And then it will culminate in this ceremonial game. So it's been funded, it's on, Major League Baseball signed off on it, so you'll be hearing more about it.
How many ringers do we have in the UPD?
It's funny because more are coming up, right?
Nationwide talk.
Yeah, okay, so information I just heard last week is that Major League Baseball is so excited about this idea that not only are they supporting this first kickoff program in Utah, but they've taken it on board. They've hired, you know, one of the commissioners that was behind this, they've hired him now full time. They want to do 2 games a year moving forward, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, but the start of it has been here with UPD, the Sheriff's Office, and Utah. So we're excited about where it's going, but yeah, baseball will be in our future.
What are you gonna name the team?
So right now, I think it's calling it Valor League is what it's being called right now. But yeah, and if you guys want any more, we've got some marketing videos, anything like that, I'm happy to share it with you, but I just wanted to get it on your radar. Thank you.
To say I cannot be romantic about baseball. Mayor will do hockey next. I'm so excited about the baseball. I forgot to mention one thing we were meeting today with Attorney's Office Ralph Bridget and Chief Ackerman Zach to discuss some separation assets, cooperation, potential agreements. That's gonna be a really important meeting scheduled for last week, and I was hoping to have information to bring you today. Had to be rescheduled to this afternoon, so when that's done, I'll be providing you some information on what that's gonna be a really important meeting in terms of advancing this project. Soon, and I will reach you info, at least for sure, the next update. Any questions for me?
I just want to ask, I'm assuming we still have adequate cooperation on both sides as we unmingle these things, these divisions that may take longer than July 1st. There's no drop dead. Eviction notice is going out to UPD by this deadline in any of our divisions or locations. We're doing it collaboratively and amicably.
Yes, so far, we've gone well.
Yeah, and we have said over and over and over, nobody's kicking anything
I
out.
want everybody to hear, I agree, I feel like that's how it's been, but I think it's important that everybody know that.
Yeah, when I say, we're projecting like, end of July, that's not because they're saying we're having to,
Right.
but, I think we have
that we're working to
Yes.
separate things in due process.
we feel a sense of purpose and urgency, and let's move forward. So there's just no reason to wait. So it's great. Sir, any other questions? Okay, appreciate the support as always.
Thank you. All right, item 6, Salt Lake County Law Enforcement Bureau update.
Everybody. Touched on a few things that have already been covered, but perhaps we should elaborate a little bit on a few of them. We did put out our recruitment for the captain, sergeant, and deputy positions earlier this week. We have the captain recruitment is going to be closing on April 29th next week. And then for sergeants and for deputy positions, that will be closing on May 13th. So as applications come in, we're going to begin the interview process so that we can start building a roster in anticipation of our budget being approved May 7th. We allowed an extra week for applications to come in. It's difficult to expect members to apply for an org chart that is not complete and finalized with a finalized budget. So we wanted to allow a little extra time with a finalized org chart that members can make decisions and put it or not. But that will be closing on May 13th. And we do anticipate shortly thereafter completing all of our interviews, and we will begin making offers for those positions. As we go through this, as of this week, it's been daily updates with UPD. We're updating with numbers as to how many applicants we have. Granted, we haven't started any interviews yet, but we are seeing a good response and our numbers are climbing. We're going to continue to communicate that with UPD admin so that they can make plans as we go along. We anticipate after offers are made and accepted for sworn positions, we're going to work with UPD to begin moving members as much as we can into those county-funded positions we know are coming back. That will just help facilitate the transition of equipment, transition of services. We anticipate going clear until July 1st with members in those positions, rather than historically how we pulled, large number of sworn offline for weeks or even up to a month, and then leave it to, UPD to figure out a way to provide those services for extended periods of time. We're going to work with Chief Mazur and Chief Dial that will be able to pull members in 2 to 4 hour blocks and have them start their onboarding and things that go along with that. But that'll be much more manageable for UPD and better for the public to be able to do that in small planned out chunks rather than one big block with, the loss of a lot of staffing. So as was mentioned earlier, we're very excited. We are bringing on 2 lieutenants beginning this Sunday. That would be much needed. We need a few more hands with this transition. So we do welcome Taylor and Lieutenant Lord. In addition to that, we had 4 others, 2 lieutenants and 2 sergeants who applied for lieutenant positions that are sitting on our lieutenant roster. Again, we're waiting for other postings to open and close before we can make any decisions, and we need to have a finalized budget before we can make decisions on command. But as we get there, we'll be making those offers and communicating that with UPD. So That's all that I have, unless there are any questions.
I just have one, refresh me on how many total employees you guys plan to hire.
Currently, with our current org chart, we have 87 sworn and 43.
The bulk of them will transition July 1. I get you're taking some overhead now with your, start July 1.
That is correct.
We're coordinating that with Maz, and we're not left short, super short, even if you're taking some of our great people, which is unfortunate. But
And we're gonna try and keep doing that.
Okay, we want you to do something.
How many civilians did you say?
43
Thank you.
civilians. So we are in the process, with our civilians, finalizing our job descriptions, which is a little bit more nuanced and more specific. So we're looking with county HR to get those. We've been in talks every day this week. We're hoping to start getting those back very soon. We are going to be doing a Q&A for our sworn staff next week. That just went out, and very shortly after that, when we have some finalized job descriptions, we're going to do one specific for our civilian personnel as well. So it's exciting that we're finally getting to this point.
Chief, does the 87 sworn include ones that have already been hired?
That's correct.
Okay, just checking. Thanks.
Well, kind of my understanding is, I don't know the exact math, but if you take the current sworn population in UPD and what we intend to have once the transition is complete, and what you intend to have, which is your 87, they should be places for everybody, and we're gonna have to hire probably 30 to 40 sworn officers. I don't know about the civilian side, so I think math-wise, that's a reality, right, is we're gonna be short.
Yes, yeah, in all likelihood, and rough numbers, but that doesn't.
So don't hold me to those numbers, but
Neither, but I do think you're on the right track, that we are gonna need to be doing hiring, and it's was brought up, I think, in the next week or two. The picture is gonna become a little bit more clear than we know right now, but it's already starting to materialize.
yeah, my big concern is that, obviously we need people to go over to the sheriff's office, and that when we get into that June timeframe, that we have as much time as we can to make sure we're working with the individuals then that maybe don't know exactly where they're gonna end up, and then we can help them make sure they find a proper home and that everybody's secure and stable in a job. I think that's everybody's goal.
100%. And just so everybody knows, if not already, our recruitment is only open and available to current UPD employees. We are giving them preferential treatment. They are getting the first bite at the apple before we go anywhere external. So we would like to do all of our recruiting out of UPD if that is possible. That is our goal, and the goal of providing everyone with an option and what they would want to choose. We've stressed, and honestly, if we have any officers that are, in the lower of the seniority ranks, we are encouraging them to put in the sheriff's office just so they have an option both ways. I know me and Chief Master and Chief Dial talked about this regularly. We do not want either organization to be in a position where we can play off of drifts, doing the best that we can, but that does not happen.
That's where I was coming from. Hopefully you're all accurate with that we both need to hire additional people on both sides, but we've got to also be prepared. Should there not be 87 individuals that want to leave UPD and go to the sheriff, sheriff has to hire from outside UPD. July 1, UPD's left heavy FTEs. That's what I want to try to forecast as best we can. That's why I was saying, sit on the 11 vacancies, don't promote. Just to make sure we land that number on both sides, right? Okay.
Yeah, very, very important, and I do believe we're making progress, and the communication is continual, and we'll keep relaying that information as we get it.
Okay. Thank you.
So July 1st, updates from the sheriff's office, your updates would be, would there be any interaction that before the board, any way to communicate what's going on and going into the future?
I guess when I took this job, I said that there's 1,000 things that I need to do and I only know about 300 or 400 of them. I would say that that's one that we just haven't really thought of. I mean, we want to be good partners and are definitely open to communication. I know with the Slovisa partners, we're definitely going to be more involved. But I haven't had a conversation as to how that will look with the UPD board starting in July for that. But we want to do it.
And I think that's a decision this board could make of, I guess the way I personally view it is probably not every meeting like we have right now, but if there was something happening that we wanted the sheriff's office to come give an update on, we could do that, we could work with Mass on that, but however often this board wanted.
Yeah, thank you. That would, yeah, what I foresee is that would be part of my role is if you need information, you want information, I'll get it for you. Need something from the county, from some other stakeholder entity, I'll make sure the board has all that information. And I'll even invite Ackerman every now and then. Say hi.
Thank you. Item 7, UPD reorganization discussion. I don't have anything to add today, but I'll open that up. Anybody?
So, what I understand from side legislators I've had is that like smoke is coming out of the back and with respect to so at least the discussions, and the sheriff and the county and, assuming that's true, and I know that some leases and kind of some work to do, voting on this, but I just want to say, that I'm really grateful and gratified that folks have been able to work something out that makes sense. I hope both parties, that's critical. And well, requires compromise on both sides. So I think we thank you for that.
Informational, can I ask how many sworn and civilians are part of the UPD? I should know that going forward. Just, we're seeing 87 and 43 on the sheriff's side.
Post separation.
Currently, there's 330 sworn,
330 sworn.
and there's, I believe, about 100 civilians.
For current.
That's current.
Numbers.
In the new model, I think he's
In the
asking.
new model. 270 sworn, and I'm not positive on the civilian side. I'd have to get that number for you.
67, somewhere around.
67.
How many?
67.
Somewhere around there.
And I can tell you that the precincts and the divisions have been actively monitoring their staffing and reducing their numbers through attrition and supporting them for those reductions.
Anything else? All right. Item 8, acceptance of donations. Chief Dodd.
Good morning. 2 donations, which we certainly appreciate, those partners, supporting the organization. One from Matt Dyson, $500 for a pancake breakfast. And another separate one from, Jordan's Brew on Highland Drive, another $500 for the same public safety appreciation breakfast.
To approve and accept those donations.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve and accept. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. We have a motion to second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so thank you. Upcoming meetings, we've got a finance committee meeting on Thursday, May 7th at 8 AM. The mutual aid fallen officer memorial Wednesday, May 8th at 10 AM. The next UP board meeting on Thursday, May 16th at 9 AM. Office of the Sheriff Annual Award Ceremony Wednesday, June 5th at 10 AM. And then another UP board meeting on Thursday, June 20th at 9 AM. Yes.
I noticed on my calendar on May 7th, there's a conflict of, I believe, a UFA Finance Committee meeting simultaneous with UPD Finance Committee meeting. Is that, unless something's changed on the UFA side, I still have that on my calendar. It's the big one for the UFA. I remember finance committee hears from each division.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
our
know.
Sorry to be a pain, but unless somebody wants to propose a new time right now, we're fine here.
I think the UFA is scheduled from 8 to 11. We could bump the UPD finance to 11. Since you all be across the street, and many of you.
It's true. It's a really fun morning.
Yeah, it's a really great day. I didn't want that. I don't know if we want to address it now. Or I think we need to.
We have our crossing guard. Bunch of 11:30.
What do we think that UPD finance committee meeting agenda will? Should pretty much be over.
Yeah, we're planning to have the tentative budget, available at that time and also the estimate of where the fund balances. That would be the bulk of the meeting.
I can send my finance director. I can send Lisa if I can't. We do it at 11. So.
Carolyn, you're the chair.
I'm always just putting on others.
At this moment, it's 11 a.m.
11 a.m.
Same day. No, it doesn't work.
I could do Wednesday morning. I don't know about others, but Wednesday morning, if we switched it just today,
Tuesday morning works for me.
I'm free Wednesday mornings for work.
as long as we're done by 10.
We have our fallen officers memorial outside, so you're already gonna be here. It's at 9:30, so if you want to join us with that.
So 8 o'clock on the Wednesday rather than on the 8th.
Our schedule says 10, it's 9:30.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you'll already be here, so if you want to join us for that.
So
that-
8
that works.
a.m. finance.
Starts at 10. Right, but it's just after. That sounds good to me.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, any other meetings we missed on that? Right, item 10, approval of the April 10, 2024 board meeting minutes. Entertain a motion to approve or unless there's any amendments.
Steve Cobus, so moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes. Move on to item 11. We do have a closed session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation. Do we have a motion for the closed session for that? So noted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Harmony, if you call in, is that ready? Can we have some quiet for a minute as she's calling roll? Thank you.
Director Cardenas,
Yes.
Director Dally.
Yes.
Director Keithley. Director Olson. Director Litback. Yes. Director Peterson. Director Cobus.
Here.
Director Silvestri.
Yes.
Director Stevenson.
Yeah, agreed.
Aye.